Good morning. On this lovely day in Pelican Bay, we are very fortunate to be able to interview a very lovely lady. Today is Thursday, February 24th, 2011. And we're here with the Pelican Bay Historical Society to speak with Alessandra Higgs. Tell us about your background before you became involved in Pelican Bay.
My background we came from London, Ontario, Canada, and in Canada we were basically doing, at the time that we came to visit Naples, we had two ready-mix company which I managed, and so we went from London, Ontario to a place called Sudbury, Ontario, which was further north, and so we had, because prior to that we were just doing road work. So with that, we would, in the winter, we would come to visit in Naples. And
why would you visit in Naples?
We visit Naples because there was a family that we knew that they had already purchased a little cottage on Central Avenue. They called them cottages then because all the homes were very small. So we came to visit them. And the first day we got here, actually, Bill and Bob went to search for land for some reason, because that's the business we were in up there, developing and so on. So we bought our first piece of property there.
Bill and Bob? Bill,
my ex-husband, and Bob Hardy, which I think he's well known here. And so that's how we got started. So so that was in mid-60, probably closer to 70. We came for about 6 years to visit with the children, and it was around Christmas, and we would come at Christmas and we would come at Easter time. So even though we were investing, we were not here full-time at that time.
So when would you say you came down full-time?
We came down full-time, I believe, in 73. We moved. We moved here in 73. We purchased a home in Lely, and again, in those days you didn't find too many homes. There were 3-bedroom homes. They were all 2 bedrooms, and so we found a model home in Lely that again was developed by a Canadian fellow, and we purchased the house in Lely.
And the name John Agnelli, does that ring a bell with you?
Yes, by all means. John Agnelli used to sell us cement, which you mix cement with other things and you get concrete. So he used to sell us cement, and when we decided to start a ready-mix company here, we were of course searching for somebody that would be willing to move, and in those days you just didn't find people here. There weren't that many people, and so we thought, okay, we'll take a few people down there that are Canadians. And so John lived in Toronto. He had a young family, and it took him a little while to make a decision, but he came down, and by all means he then ran the ready-mix company for us for a few years.
Now, you started in Naples. What brought you to the Laurentians? How did that happen?
Well, while we were here, and remember we were still buying all kinds of properties. Even the King's Lake might be familiar, and we were the owner of the property there. We worked. Well, this is the first time we basically worked with other partners. So we purchased a piece of property next door to Loudermill Park. I think it was 3 acres, if I'm not mistaken. And we thought there was a need for a luxury condo, and the idea was that we could market the condo with people from Port Royal. They were a little bit older and they didn't want to look after their homes, so we decided to perhaps look into it. So we designed the Laurentians. We made a point of saying, well, these people one to perhaps a large living room, because that wasn't available in those days, and 3 bedrooms plus a den. We had 4 or 5 bathrooms or something like that. So we built, what we did really then, we bought the land from these other partners because they didn't want to keep that property. It became very expensive to keep that piece of property. So we bought the land from the other 2 partners, and we decided to do it ourselves. And of course we had to basically get some bankers from Chicago to deal with us and to lend money. And so that's how we did the Laurentians.
No, they were large units, 3,000 square feet, especially in those days. Did they sell right away, or you had a problem?
Yeah, they're between 3,000 to 3,500 square feet. They're 2 per floor, beautiful units. Yes, we did. Well, not right away. That later on we found that could happen, but we sold everything except the 4 units on the bottom. The first floor units were not selling. So in those days, if my recollection is right, in those days we had, the interest was high. So we were paying $1,000 a day in those days for the remaining of the money that we had to pay the bank. So what we did was we sold the house in Lely, because we were paying $1,000 a day. We sold the house in Lely and we moved in one of the units, and then we were able to pay for the $1,000 interest a day. But as it turned out, really, that as soon as we moved in there, for some reason, we sold the other 3 units. So that's how the Laurentians came about.
Interesting. But you still didn't get into Pelican Bay. You then went to Marco Island. What did you do in Marco Island?
Well, years ago, you couldn't buy a piece of property in Marco Island because everything was owned by the Marco brothers, if I'm not mistaken. And so we heard that they were going to sell property on the beach that normally they would have developed it themselves. But they were having some problems, and for cash reasons, so we approached them, and they said, yeah, we'd be happy to sell you a piece of property. So in between time, then we decided, well, maybe that's a good place it's a good place for us to go ahead and get the property and start developing. And so we learned an awful lot about it, and so we did that first, the building in Marco Island.
And what buildings did you build?
I think that was the Prince, because we have the Prince, the Princess, and the Duchess over there. So I think it was the Prince that we built first.
And when and why did you come to Pelican Bay?
Well, first of all, in Pelican Bay, we'd heard who owned the property and that kind of thing. And we thought, having the ready-mix company, perhaps we can develop, not develop, but we weren't thinking of developing there. We thought we could sell concrete to the builders here. And so as time went by, we then decided that, well, never mind that, but we may just want to build something there. And so we started talking to the people in Pelican Bay. I think it was Russ Obley, Byron Cost, and back and forth. And I remember I had a day off, and on my day off, because we used to work 7 days a week in those days, on my day off I was home, and I was trying to get, everything done at home. So I had the washing machine going on, I had my hair in curlers, and I was at the beach. And all of a sudden I see Bill coming down with 3, 4 guys. And I'm saying, oh my God, what is that? So there they were, and I'm at the beach, because I thought, well, I'll get a half-hour sun. And so I'm sitting there, and he says, oh, these people just want to take a look at our unit. Well, my God, sure enough, the unit was, the beds weren't made because I stripped everything and I was going on. Well, anyhow, they got the idea and they were able to look at the space and what we did and so on. And they asked us, could you do a building like this in Pelican Bay? And we said, yes, we could. But as we kept asking questions and we found out how much the property was here and so on and so forth, and we thought the property at the Laurentian was expensive because it was $1,000 a square foot, really, the actual just property alone. So then when they told us how much it was, we said, well, there's no way we could do a Laurentian in Pelican Bay because the property was just too expensive, and then you just could not afford to do that. So then we, with the engineers and architects and so on, we decided then we should do something with more apartments, more condos. And so it turned out then that it always takes to do any building, it'll take you about 8-9 months at least for the design, and then the floor plans, and then of course you start building, and it's 2 years. So we did that, and the Dorchester came to be the first condo then, first high-rise in Pelican Bay.
The building, the Laurentians, is about 6 stories, if I'm not mistaken, and here you were able to build 20 stories. Was that a factor that made it more?
Definitely. The Laurentians, we have 2 buildings, and they're 8 stories.
8 stories.
And so the 8 stories, that was as high as you could go. So here we could go higher, and of course that was better for a developer, and as it turns out now, it works out beautifully. So that's the reason.
And what did you use for a sales office there? I heard different stories.
My goodness, we could only, in those days, you could only get in, it wasn't really a road, but you could only come as far as the, where there was a bank. Later they built a bank, but our little trailer was right where Naples Federal came in to be later, and then now it's Wachovia. But it's really the drive-in part of Wachovia, right on the corner we were there. Right across from, now it's called the Phil and so on. So we had this little trailer, and first of all, I sat there by myself for a little bit just to see if we could get anybody walking in. And then we thought, well, we better hire one more salesperson. So we hired one more salesperson at that time. And what was interesting in those days is that, especially when you don't have a model, as time went by, you could have a model and you could really show people. We really weren't fortunate then to do that because there was nobody else there. There was no way we could have a model. We didn't have a fancy trailer and so on. But when the people came in, and remember that Pelican Bay, the people, Westinghouse it was called then, they did not have an office in there. So it was just us. So they had an office front, I believe, on the trail. And so when people came in, we had to do the whole thing. We had to, first of all, explain that Pelican Bay was, I believe, I don't know if I'm right, but it was 3 miles long, and there's 300 acres, and we could show them a little map. It was just kind of a map in color. And we could tell them, okay, the high-rises are going to be towards the beach, and you can see the view, and so on and so on. But then other things are going to be here, and we had to basically then tell them everything. And so in that case, we would do that. We would sell Pelican Bay first, really. And then we would go into our floor plans, and that's the only way that we really could sell the Dorchester with the floor plan. And that's how it started. That's how it started.
So there was really nothing in Pelican Bay.
There was nothing there, and often, you know, you wouldn't really see that many people there, you know, come in. And but anyways, it worked out really well.
So your first building was the Dorchester,
The Dorchester.
and that was kind of very much like the Duchess, or pretty much shitty?
Yes, we used to say, well, if you don't want to live here, then you could go over there, and it's called the Duchess, and you could buy one exactly the same. So we call it the sister, yeah.
When that was completed, you started the Grusenor, or did you do them simultaneously?
No, the Grosvenor came a little bit later. What we did, we had 2 high-rises going at the same time. And also, at that time, we were also working with Kingslake. So we had a lot of stuff going on at that time. And we wanted to do something then a little different. As we sold the Dorchester, we knew we had to have something else on the go here. And we started talking to Westinghouse again about purchasing another piece of property. And also, we had to come up with a different idea. And 2 reasons, too. We were builder developers as much as we were selling. We were doing our own building, which it works a lot better if you can do everything yourself. You can give buyers a better deal. You can reassure them that they're going to get, the proper thing that you're going to sell them, the proper condo, and so on. So we were always looking ahead, because not only the salespeople needed the jobs then, because once one gets sold and the other one, you're finished. So we were thinking about the salespeople and the builders. So we then designed the Grosvenor, and we wanted to do something a little different. So Bill and I would take trips in out of state and look at different hotels and different condos. In those days, there were not a lot of condos, even in other states. But mostly, we got the idea from for the Grosvenor, a little bit of an idea that we, with the atrium. And that, of course, was a challenge. But all in all, we worked out a lot of problems that needed to be worked out before the plans were done. And that's how the Grosvenor came about. And another interesting thing, years ago, you could not have a name, an Italian name or whatever. People did not like Italians in those days. Italian names, that is. And of course, I'm full-blooded Italian, I wanted an Italian name, but we couldn't. So we had to think of all these English names. And that's the reason we have English names. The Dorchester, the Grosvenor, Hyde Park, and Beaumont, and the Prince, Princess, and the Duchess, So it was, that was interesting.
There's a hotel in Cambridge, right outside of Boston, that looks just like the Grosvenor. I don't know if you happened to visit that in the 80s, but I used to take my children there because of the way the elevator was.
Oh, neat.
You did the Hyde Park, and then did anything follow Hyde Park?
Not here, no, not in Pelican Bay. We did the Hyde Park. Again, that, it was the same thing there, that we were selling the Grosvenor, and soon we thought it was going to be sold out, and we better have something else. But it took us a lot longer to sell the Grosvenor, because we did have, the economy went down quite a bit. It's probably as bad as it is now. And so it took us, we delayed it somewhat. We delayed it doing the Hyde Park, but eventually we sold out the Grosvenor, and at the same time, again, we were doing the Hyde Park plans, and we thought, maybe we don't want to do another high-rise, for the fact that I believe that the Stratford was coming along as another high-rise. So we thought, perhaps that's not a good idea. We'll have too much to sell as far as high-rises are concerned. So we decided then to go and do the mid-rise, they call the High Park mid-rise. And again, we wanted to do something a little bit different, and we had looked at the other coast for the design of the high-rise. So, and also we went to Mexico, and there was a hotel somewhat like that, and I can't remember the name of it, because the mid-rise, the High Park is very difficult to build. It's almost like with the high-rise, you're building one on top of the other, one on top of the other. The other, with the mid-rise, you have to go sort of in a slant. So you're kind of like building a different, like one house alongside of the other house and so on like that. So it became quite expensive. But because we, at this point, were doing very well with the other, they'd been sold and so on, and we were committed. But we felt like we really bought the best piece of property for the Hyde Park, because we were right adjacent to the golf course, and it's a pretty view there. So that's how that came about, and we sold that and built it, and we were happy with all that.
You use the term "we" in a rather cavalier fashion. It's quite an undertaking to be the builder, the developer, the sales. How did you manage to run this in your small family?
Well, yes. The reason I say "we" is because even before I married Bill, my ex-husband, I was managing a bridal boutique gown that I was part owner. There was 3 of us owners. So I had been in business. I liked that. So we got married, to make it short, and we then wanted to start a business to, do something. So we started with doing road building. Bought the first piece of equipment that works for the road. So we got working together, and our lives really were, as much as we were married and we started having children and everything, we always worked together. We came up with ideas, we got along well, and so the 2 of us basically worked with everything, and we learned as we went on, and most of the time in those days in Canada, and here too, you never had enough people to work for you. So it was kind of like, hey, I just had to go. I just had to work. I mean, there was no other, and I was used to hard work anyway. So that's why I say we, as far as the 2 of us being partner. And I enjoyed business. I like people, and we had different jobs. I mean, I used to sell and help with decorating and so on and so forth, and work with architects also, because I was the one that heard what our client wanted. They would come in and they said, well, I like this, but maybe if there was such and such. So we were very much involved, the 2 together. And yes, it was a lot of work. We had a lot of good people from Canada, because you couldn't hire people here. There was nobody here. And we did very well. We worked hard, but did very well.
Could we interest you in giving a seminar, and perhaps we can get this economy moving?
I gave that up a long time ago. I'll tell you, 32 years ago, stress is stress,
Well, Alessandra, I want to thank you very much for giving your time. I know you're very active. You did wonderful things here in Pelican Bay, but I know you're very active in the entire community with various organizations. And it's so nice of you again to join us. Thank you very much.
Well, it was my pleasure. Thank you.